Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to the last meeting of today. We would like to invite you to the next meetings, so that these smaller meetings in the big room because of the security reasons. So we are really glad that you are here with us. And today it works like this: that this building of the world is described in enlarge and in detail, and this is another discussion about building the world in details from the great and renowned costume designer Wiesława Starska, who has been working with Agnieszka Holland, Krzysztof Kieślowski, Andrzej Wajda for many years, with Janusz Zaorski. But you will learn about that. So, with Sławomir Idziak, with Alan Starski, about all that she will tell you by herself. So without further ado, I leave you in her hands. Hello, my name is Wiesława Starska, and I would like to start from showing the trailer of a film which was very important for me and a big thing, so to speak.
If I see you get up, the radio goes right off. Hey, now I turned it on. It takes just a few moments for the tubes to heat up. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the BBC in London.
In a world where owning a radio was strictly forbidden, one man found a way to bring good news to his people. He made it up.
Yesterday, Churchill addressed the Polish people. Polish? You want the latest news or don't you?
Overnight, a few simple words
The Russians are at Bizanica.
gave them a reason to hope.
They're sending tanks. Tanks? Under massive air cover. Did he tell you about the front line?
Has he heard anything about the stock market?
And an ordinary man
Jacob Hyam may not be the Messiah, but he could be a prophet.
became a leader.
My name is Jacob Hyam.
The Jacob Hyam?
I beg you, destroy that radio before the Germans find out about it.
I don't have a radio.
Since Mr. Hyam has shared information with us, there has not been a single suicide in the entire ghetto.
You gotta hang on in there. The Russians are 400 kilometers away. I think he tells these stories just to get attention.
At least he's tried to give these people some hope.
I started to make up those things. I almost believed them.
We'll never see the Russians, huh? So what are those then?
It's a wonderful medicine you have. I admire what you're doing. I really do.
Mr. Churchill, I would like you to bring us up to date on the events around Bizanica.
The Russians aren't coming, are they?
Did I lie to you about something like that?
Academy Award winner Robin Williams,
You started this, and now you have to go on.
Jacob the Liar,
Let's only hope that your lies were true.
Hundreds of films hit the box office.
That was a big American blockbuster, to which, as you have seen, you had to prepare a lot of costumes. But before I will tell you about the movies, I will tell you how I got into the movies. I graduated from the painting department in the Fine Arts Academy in Krakow, with a specialty of textiles. However, making textiles occurred to be monotonous for me. My temperament could not abide with this. In order to do something, because I wouldn't want to do tapestry and doing short movies, people would come, teams would come, the crews would come to Krakow, and they were looking for extras, the girls and boys. So they would come to the academy, where there was a lot of great girls, and so we would go with our friends to to work as an extra. I start to like that. They try to dress us up, put hats on us, and I asked if I could also work in set design, in costume design. She said, yes, of course, come to Chełmska 21 to Warsaw, and we'll see. So I went to Chełmska 21 in Warsaw, and that's how I became an assistant of costumologist, and after a short time, I became an independent costume designer. And I got lost. Oh, that's a long story. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3. I said, and let me repeat and I confirm, that Wiesława was the most beautiful woman in the world, in my world of that time. And how did I get to Andrzej Wajda's films? As an assistant, I was making a beautiful TV series, The Great Love by Balzac, and I learned a lot during that show. And to Wajda's movies, I got. We were making the streak of Shadow. We were making the costumes together, and there was only one problem, that all the costumes that we did, the Shadow line, yes, and because all the costumes were not realistic enough for somebody who's been on the ship for a very long time, and the pictures were made in Varna in Bulgaria, and it was destroying this making the damaging the costumes in the bathtub to make them more real. And then it was the Man of Marble, and I must admit that the costume of Krystyna Janda was the costume in which I was walking around, and Andrzej said, dress her up as you are dressed. So everything, all that was collected, and yes, that was true. I dressed her for myself. And I wanted to talk about the profession of a costume designer. It's not that after the academy you understand and know everything. In order to get prepared for designing for the set, you get a script, you read the script, and this is my first. You have the discussion with the director. After you read the script and you know what it's all about, you have to know. You have to focus all your knowledge on the historical information. You either base your information on painting, like it was in the film Downtown, or based on pictures, as it was in the Ladies from the Wilka. And not to mention all those wartime films like Korczak, Europe. This is basic knowledge. Now you're opening the computer and you know everything. I used to spend months in libraries to get the knowledge, which later helped me in costume design. I start to make the first designs, getting to know from the director who's playing the given character. It's not like that anymore, because you are designing blindly because you don't know who will be cast in that role. So after the first designs, you meet the director, and the question is whether my concept is in agreement with his concept. We have long discussions. Of course, I can improve the designs later. I can take the suggestions. However, based on my drawings, this is the first knowledge about how this will look like. The next discussions are held with the set designer and the DOP, because depending on how this, because the set designer has to tell me what is the color palette of individual sets or of individual locations of the whole vision, and then this also gets reflected in the costume. Can we show the general designs? But slowly. Because apart from the movies, I also did TV theaters and theatrical costumes. This is the Salem Witches. This is for the Salem Witches. Directed by Zygmunt Hübner. That was the end of the beginning of the 1980s, with huge problems with buying textiles, and these are all stylish things for which you needed a lot of material. And I used anything I had at my disposal. I used all sorts of stuff just to get different texture. I was putting the paints on it, and this is the next part of the Salem Witches, and you will see them one by one. These are augmented projects, zoomed up, blown up project that you've seen. But this is what I would want to show in those costumes. The next one. In order to differentiate somebody, or to differentiate between richer and poorer families. This is an older person, so all my knowledge has to be based on who is going to be dressed how. Whether he has nobody could walk around with a bare head during that time, so I had to get all this information not to get anything wrong. It had to be either a scarf or a hat. This is another movie, Danton. It was shot in Paris. A fantastic moment with the richness of fabrics, of colors, the richness of everything. The wife of Danton, the young one, the lover of Danton. Danton himself. And this is Jacob the Liar. This is the trailer that I showed you. Here you can. This is Robbie Williams. I would only we can watch this until the end with those designs. This is Robin Williams. This is Mrs. Frankfurter. I will tell you in a while how it all was devised. Alan Arkin, stop. So, I was offered work on that film, and I knew that it all happens during the Nazi occupation. 2 weeks of shooting were in Poland, the rest was in Hungary. A whole range of fantastic stars. We had Alan Arkin, Bob Balaban, Liv Schreiber, who's right now a very well-known star, as well as, of course, Robin Williams. I did those projects and I did designs, and I went to Los Angeles, and I realized that designs do not reflect how these costumes should be, and they will be. So I went there with 2 huge suitcases with old, not costumes, but parts of costumes. I don't know. I don't remember, like a huge 30-meter table in Los Angeles. All the presidents of and CEOs of the companies and representatives of studio are sitting there. There's the director, there's Robin Williams, and the rest of the actors did not participate. These were like first meetings, and my designs are being presented around, and I said, okay, maybe you do not understand what I would try to show. So they opened up those two big suitcases, and I started to get those rags, because these were real rags, like torn rags, old torn caps, trousers, and said, "I'll put it on," said Robin Williams. There was no. Okay, let's go there. I'll put it on in the toilet, and I was running around in this torn sweater, torn trousers, because we were changing, so to make to give them the look, what sort of film that would be, how that is going to look like. I think that we've managed to pull this off, because I've dressed up the rest of the actors somewhere else. Everything would be good, but after reading the script, I knew that there are scenes in which they die. So there can't be one costume. We need costumes for doubles. Yes. And as the result, these costumes has to be duplicated. Robin Williams, we had a problem with him because he had his jacket, the arm of his jacket was torn off. I had 3 jackets like this, but there were situations when they tore off this arm of the jacket so often that I didn't manage to re-sew it back again. I loved that film because things like that happen. I mean, but I love that film. It gave me a breather, a certain opening. But we got to Robin Williams. With Mr. Andrzej Wajda, I did 11 movies. With great, I do have a great affection for the girls from Wilka. The maids of Wilka. It was done in September. You went to Radachówka. It was supposed to be repainted, and Andrzej called me and said, "You know, Wiesia, I would like the costumes to be white, and so, and you know, September was extremely cold, like, and he wanted white and like floating. I didn't have the materials. I managed to do that, but the funny thing is that all those fleeting women had to have a very, very hot underwear, and to hide all that, we had to. Did I say something wrong? No, I don't need that. If you're talking about those films, because some of them we did together, I wanted to add something. The effect was such that the film was beautiful. It was in the interiors, which were. It was an old manor, and I was most fascinated that Alan made really beautiful, noble green walls, and then I understood why he wanted Andrzej wanted girls to be dressed in white. It wasn't an obvious white. Everything was écru, creme, and beige, but the costumes were very, very bright. What else? I just wanted to add to that cooperation with Andrzej. Wiesia said Andrzej was fantastic because she has a lot of respect for the director. He was also our film world friendship, and thanks to that, many films which seemed very modest, just like The Maids of Wilko, which were shot in a small, forgotten manner, which had very limited abilities of changing anything, but all this, the costumes, the interiors, they enchanted Andrzej, and he was able to acknowledge this. And I must tell you that it's a film about the beautiful weather in the summer, but and it was very difficult to make it because the weather was horrible, so it was difficult to pull it off. After the design, here you have the costumes of the maids of Wilko. Can we move on? Yeah, so here we've got this picture blown up. Everything was white with a lot of flowers, very fleeting, very... Yeah, that's the same character. Majka Komorowska. She was horseback riding, so this is horse riding, this equestrian costume, and let's make a break. After designing the costume, they're not. You have to you cannot print them. They have to be sewn together. You have to. I don't know how it works. Like right now, my last costumes in the theater. We have the theatrical tailor, but we had a Zopia who was sewing beautiful costumes, because the tailors were like old timers and they knew what it's all about. First, they make a certain form out of some standard material, and then from the target material. I also could make mistakes, my dears. In the film The Bodensee, which I did with Janusz Zaorski, where we have Kalina Jędrusik, I came up that with her beautiful red hair I would make a red dress. We tried once, it's okay. The second, worse, and I didn't like that. And the third measure, when the dress was ready, when she was supposed to go to the set to the set, I decided it's horrible. It's horrible. It's not the character that I would like to show. And I said, unfortunately, I will pay for this dress, but make another one for me, a black one. And that was a bullseye. So everybody has the right to make mistakes.
Wiesiu, dotykasz tutaj bardzo ciekawego tematu i wydaje mi się też kluczowego dla twojego zawodu, no bo kostium uzupełnia jakby charakter, tak?
Yeah, the costume shows a certain character, it's a certain commentary. So when you're designing a costume, in a way, you're also trying to inform the viewer about the character. So I wonder, how do you think about when you're reading a script? How do you translate this into the character into a costume? I forgot. The first thing I always ask the director after, when we have Janek, Stasiek, Basia, I need to know which profession is that, because otherwise I will dress the doctor differently and the janitor differently. That's the basic stuff. If I know that already, I need to learn more about each of those characters. If I know that too, I ask the director, can I talk to the actors? Because that is very important, because not everybody... I can make I can turn Zapasiewicz into beggar and Gaius into somebody else, because they're fantastic actors and they understand that this costume will help them in building the character. With women, it differs. The bigger the star, the bigger distance they have to themselves. And she knows that this costume is that it will help her or define her character in a movie at a given moment. So discussions with the actors sometimes are difficult. So you have to have a lot of diplomacy, so that in those discussions to smuggle the thing that you want to show, but it should always come from them. The second thing is, the directors quite often ask me, because with all those, I'm always during those measurings, etc. Or is she looking good? Can I show her like that? I said, can I show her like this? I say, you chose her, you have to decide. But there are also situations when I ask the actors. In Paper Marriage, Josia Trzepiecińska was playing in a nightclub where girls were doing striptease, and I said, I will never take my clothes off. I said, well, you took that role, you have to take your clothes off. But I will come up with something, and they will, the latex and and you will be the bride. The bride? The director liked the idea because she's totally different, and I dressed her up in guard. White gloves, white cloak, white dress. When she went out, she looked like beautifully, but everybody looked what would be next. So she would be she slowly got one glove off, the other glove off. She took the garter off. She had a beautiful corset, and she didn't undress, but she showed in the back, and it looked very, very sexy and very, very tasteful. So this is what a costume designer can do to help the actor. Did I say it well? I didn't tell you about one thing, about the patina. This is what you already saw during the movie, is that both the Robin Williams jacket and all the costumes, due to the fact that these actors were dying, had to be sewn together. But in order so that they are not didn't look as if they were straight from the shop. In England, there are schools that teach you applying patina, and there are people who can do it. In Poland, unfortunately, we don't have that. So what we were doing, I don't want to tell you what we were doing, because we were using the vegetable graters and chloride and other things to get this jacket of Robin Williams to the state that it would look horribly. Of course, it all depends on the material. Already at the stage of design, I have to think about it. Korczak was a black and white film, and everybody thought it's a simple movie, but as it occurred during the color rehearsal, red and black look exactly the same. Green and gray also look the same. So the rule was that we had to make those the disproportions between the colors had to be different, but they also had to have a different texture. Very much so, because glossy looks more intensive, the matte looks more intensive. This is very important in a black and white film, so that it doesn't look like it's all the same. I can only add, because what Wiesia said, it's the aging of materials. Look at, I don't want to give you the example, but there's a Polish film which was the opposite of what costume designers should think about. To what extent this character that has a costume, that the costume lives its own life. The aging, the way of the patina, its interplay with the background, etc. It looks authentic. When you have the costume taken out of the store, it makes the character being totally unrealistic. This is the example of Wiesia, who was working by hand, and the costume was living with the character, and it's not separate. It's not put on the dummy. It's organically connected with the character. Remember about that. So many times Kieślowski really was he was a fanatic of that. Quite often, if somebody brought the shoes which were fresh, he would put the dirt on the shoes himself so that they look as used. Alan and Wiesia, they are huge specialists who can add patina so well. This is such an important element, so that this costume is not a costume because we're seeing costume. This costume is a part of the character. And I think this is your big asset. Yes, as you've mentioned. It's very strange. Yeah, everybody knows that, but no, not everybody does that, and this is a tragedy in Polish movies. And this is also saving of time. it's an absurd because it's a city, because we have a war films. They have like warehouses with with soldier costume, which they do not want to age. And it looks unauthentic. So it's some crazy fight or struggle between the producers and the filmmakers. And it really, if you do not have the patina, it might kill your film. Yes, because it then looks artificial. And another thing that is also important, I've mentioned in the beginning, is the cooperation with the set designer. We had a situation during the TV theater when there were no materials. I was sewing together my costumes. Alan was preparing the decorations, and my costume enters, and it occurs that the curtains and the curtains and the dress are from the same material. Thankfully, not the sofa and the costume. Another very, on the other hand, a very educational story. There was great love of Balzac's great love. We had the Vienna's cafe. We had the main actress was Aleksandra Śląska, who had a great dress because everything was in grace, and she has like those small apricot elements. I was an assistant. Mrs. Plack decided she will have a beautiful apricot head wrap. Once she entered the decoration, the only thing that could be seen was her head wrapped in this orange head wrap. She kicked us out of this. I got a halstuk. I made a blue head wrap, and he said, and I got shouted on again that I didn't put the blue one on her head, and then Basia Śląska said that I should be thanked because it was made on the spot. It was. I have another story from another set. I was called by Andrzej Wajda. He said, Wiesia, dress Anna Polony in the red dressing gown. I do not have the evening gown, the dressing gown. Okay, we went to the storehouse. We dyed we did a dressing gown and she got to the set and she gets the red gown, and she asks, why didn't you give it to me before? And that's a satisfaction later. I said, Alan will not build the set overnight, but I can sew a costume overnight. We got the great week. What I'm talking about, the cooperation with an actor, I really like. There were a lot of everything was sewn by hand. We have Czarek Pazura, who had selected fantastic old trousers and fantastic vest. The problem with the trousers was that he was told that these trousers were a bit short, like this. And I really liked those trousers, and I wanted him to play in those trousers. And I said, if the plan is like, if the shot is like this, he has hands in his. He has the hands in his pockets. If he's moving away, he would put his trousers, draw his trousers down. And for half of the film, Andrzej didn't manage to notice that he plays in trousers which are too short. I did one movie with him. Krzysztof Zanussi was such a perfectionist, so minute, that I remember he came to the dressing room and he was checking which costumes I made of what Grażyna Szapowska will be playing in, and he sent the sound engineer who was trying to find if any of the ties is rustling or not. He knew exactly what he wanted. It wasn't the person who would suddenly on the set changes his mind. He was perfectly directed at what he wanted to achieve. Apart from that, he was always well prepared. Would you like to learn anything more from me? Would you like to ask me a question that I didn't say? Or maybe I forgot? Thank you. Do you allow interventions of the director who at the last moment says, no, I don't want these, the hats were not, such hats were not like that during the Second World War, or the ties were, well, I'm trying to be prepared. I understand that the director might not like this sort of hat, but it can't be on the shooting day, but I always sell each of the costumes of main protagonist to the director, and then we can talk whether this or that cinema, etc. I was the second set assistant, set manager in one of the films, and there was an assistant of the director who was an alcoholic, and he liked to show off. I was supervising the military costumes, and he presented to me two police officers who were like this, who were of different age. I said, guys, who was 50 years, he was for 30 years in the police, and he's just a foot soldier, and the other one is the corporal. Please change the costumes right now. He was very strange that it really matters, because nobody cares. And the second situation in the Schindler's List, I was a simple assistant, one of the 8 assistants, and the costumes were made by Ania Shepard. And I looked at all the extras have the ties tied in a triangle. I said, I'm sorry, but during the occupation they made it asymmetrical. It was called foreign hands. So I was shouted at by Ania. But I ran away. She shouted at me, so I ran away. But during the second day, all the extras had the ties tied in foreign heads. Single Windsor or double Windsor? Yes. Yeah, it was single Windsor. It is not possible to tie it in a symmetrical way. Concerning the ties, the bow tie. The bow tie is something that right now you put on a piece of rubber. It should be tied. So, in a film called the Gorgonova's Case, there was Bardini in that movie, Wapicki, and they all had bow ties. And I, knowing that it should be tied, and I didn't have them, I saw several of them. And I tell him, you can tie it now. And he says, no, you have to tie it. And I never before tied a bow tie. And he realized and said, I made a test. And then I was sitting, and in 1 hour I learned to tie the bow tie. And during the next day when he came, I said, okay, I'll tie it on you now. But he did that on purpose. And it's fantastic because I learned something new. I think that what Wiesia said in the beginning, this preparation, this research, this search for information is extremely important. Because the work of a director, his fantasies, quite often, and the willingness to break the rules are always in the artists, and you can find them in directors. You have to know that in our professions, you can risk a lot, they can risk a lot, and you have to know to what extent you can agree, because otherwise it undermines our profession, not the director's profession. And quite often there are conflicts on this, against this background. Films are historical, but we watch them contemporarily. And the contemporary fashion quite often influences. There are situations that you cannot be absolutely faithful to history because this looks funny. You have to know to what extent you can transform this to modernity. That, for example, I don't know if you have a bow tie on the rubber band or tied bow tie, so that the viewer does not feel like in a completely different place. But on the other hand, it's good if they feel in a completely different epoch. I wouldn't agree with this because with the bow tie, because the bow tie always has to be tied. But what Wiesia said, that costume is the reflection of the epoch about you say, but also the modernity. It's important because quite often the colors that were acceptable historically during some times are not acceptable for the contemporary viewer. The film has to have a certain appeal. People have to be able to like the protagonist of the movie, not only because of the recreation of the historical characters, but they're convincing to the contemporary viewer. A simple test: look at westerns. Western, theoretically, I don't know, Wild West, the end of 19th century, it should always look the same. But if you look at the costumes, you can see exactly in which years these costumes were made, right? You see the breadth of trouser legs, the vests, which were how people are the hairdos, etc., depending on the times when the film was made. Okay, another question. Hello. I have a question related to the movie of Andrzej Wajda. It's The Ash, the Diamond, where Cybulski played in his own clothes. There's a legend he ran out of the dressing room and he said he will not put on the costume. Did you meet a situation like that? And then how do you approach such a situation when the actor... This was, of course, a huge legend. But it could end up with some catastrophe when the actor, because of his whim, says that he will not put on a costume, and because behind the costume there's a hard work of the costume designer with a lots of preparation behind that. And here, with the protagonist puts on the clothes that do not reflect. Yes, because he wasn't from that times. Well, he was from those. It was not exactly from that time, but in reality he was not popular. In that case, I think that it was a sort of a symbolic costume. It was not that he said he will not put that on. I think that it was more like that Andrzej wanted him to play in that jacket, because I will tell you a story which I had with the Man of Iron, with Krystyna Janda. She was playing wife of a poor worker. She was working. She was in a sweatshirt, and she was dressed very poorly. We shot 2 days, and after 2 days of shooting, Andrzej called Krystyna and me and said, "Did you see that footage? This is not a wife of a worker." She said, "Yes, but she's very poorly dressed and she had dirty trousers. That's not the wife of a... Come up with something else." And then I remember I went to Pedet. I bought something horrible, some skirt, some blouse, and put this on Krysia, and Krysia, she sort of she drew her well, she looked perfectly in everything, and I said, if you go out like this, I will be out of my job. So we had to make her a bit more sloppy, and it occurred that this was better. So there are also situations when
Albo się można
you either
pomylić,
can make a mistake
albo
or
aktor
the actor
chce dobrze wyglądać.
wants to look good.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you.
No nie.
Not really?
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Dziękuję.